So, conflict resolution, it seems to be one of those skills that the only way you can get better, get stronger, get more confident is by going through conflict and walking through the yuck and making mistakes and just trying over and over again. It's something you have to do and just get the experience and build on it. I know there are so many tips out there for how to manage conflict, and sometimes it can be a little tough to know where to begin. However, what I want to focus on today is one thing that's really consistent in nearly every conflict, whether it's personal or professional, and that is expectations. We all have them, and usually we don't realize how big of an impact that our expectations can really have in the conflict that we're going through. To prove this point, I want to go back in time just for a little bit. Back to the summer of 91. It was my first trip to Disney World. And my grandma had taken us, it was me and my sister, and she took care of all the details. So I showed up. I got to experience all the magic that Disney World has to offer, the pixie dust, the whole nine yards. And I just assumed that's always how it was. So let's fast forward now to 2014. So this would have been my second trip to Disney World. And it was the first trip with my husband and with our children and my mom. And I was excited. I mean, how hard could it be? I'd already been there. I'm an expert, or, I was experienced, and at least I thought I was an expert. Of course, I didn't take into consideration how many years were in between of those two trips, but really, how hard could it be? And on top of that, I had an advantage that a lot of people don't have, and that is our sitter had been an entertainment cast member at Disney for several years. So between her experience and my experience, I mean, I was practically an expert. Well, imagine my surprise when we got into the park and reality slapped me just right across the face. I began to realize that everything I had expected, all of my expectations, they were just so wrong. Let's start by saying that the first mistake I made was that I skipped breakfast because I thought I would just grab something in the park. Well, to say that the Magic Kingdom was much, much bigger than I remembered would be an understatement. I mean, I didn't even know where to find the food, and I was completely overwhelmed by how many people were there. I mean, it was October. I thought for sure a lot of the kids were going to be in schools. Well, speaking of October, let me tell you something else that I was totally wrong about with my expectations. It was hot. I mean, really, really hot. Like, I thought I was gonna melt. It was just miserable. And I'm an Ohio girl, so of course, we have our seasons here. We have the most beautiful fall. And I knew that Florida didn't have fall, so to speak, but I was like, they gotta have something, right? I mean, it's gotta get a little bit cooler. No one told me, like, I don't know, the Florida summer lasts 10 months out of the year or whatever it is. I just wasn't expecting the heat. So picture this now. I had dreamt of this vacation for years. I pumped everyone up, my family, myself, and there I am starting to have a meltdown on Main Street, USA. If you're ever at Disney, please give those families grace, because I would be willing to bet that if you see a family arguing, someone in that group is either hungry, hot, or tired, or overwhelmed, or maybe all the above. I mean, it can just be a very, very overstimulating place. Fortunately, though, my family is pretty flexible, and with the help of our sitter, she had access to some pixie dust. Our trip really did end up being magical. But when I think back about that trip, and the problem really was that I had just these expectations that it was going to be magical, but I didn't share that with anyone. I didn't let anyone know what I thought was going to happen on the trip. And, I think about if I had only talked with some of my friends that had been to Disney, maybe if I had shared those expectations, that they probably would have pointed out that I was wrong and that I needed to adjust them. They could have maybe shared their perspective, their experience with me, and maybe even help me kind of come up with some backup game plans and, I don't know, how to find food and air conditioning, because that would have been a huge, huge improvement to how our vacation started. So, what does Disney World have to do with conflict management? Well, it's an example that I think we can all relate to of how, whether there's a conflict within ourselves or even with other people, that when we don't communicate our expectations, that's like the perfect recipe. I don't want to say for disaster, but definitely the perfect recipe for conflict. Think about maybe something it is that you're going through. Maybe you're frustrated in a situation. Maybe you're actually managing a conflict yourself. Something that's kind of going on a little bit, trying to figure out the best way that you want to handle it. Now, it can be personal, it can be professional, it doesn't matter. Both of those situations, we have expectations on how something should be or what the experience should be like. So, my question for you with those expectations, think about what you think is going to happen or what should happen. Is it possible that the other person, maybe that you're having this conflict with, that they don't even know how you feel? They don't know what you're expecting or why you're expecting it. And I love this quote here that I share on the screen. It's from Dr. John Deloney. He is a well known counselor, one of the Dave Ramsey personalities. And he says that we think in pictures, but we talk in words. And when I heard that, I thought, oh my gosh, that's so accurate. So let me explain what that means by kind of going back to Disney a little bit. If I told you that I want to go to Disney World, you hear my words, you hear me say, I want to go to Disney World, but you picture something in your mind. Something definitely has to pop into your brain. So, what is it that you're picturing? Do you picture like Mickey and Minnie and the Fab Five, the characters? Or are you picturing the monorail and the rides that are inside the park? Maybe it's the food. I mean, oh my gosh, Disney World has the best popcorn ever that I always have to get some, before I leave. But whatever it is that you're picturing, those items, that's not what I picture when I say that I want to go to Disney World. When I think of Disney, I picture watching the fireworks in front of Cinderella's castle with my family, waiting for that moment that Tinkerbell flies off of the castle, and just, oh my gosh, that's my Disney World when I think about it. But the words that I used to talk about this was, I want to go to Disney World. I didn't say castle. I didn't say fireworks or Cinderella or Tinkerbell. And the truth is, we can't see inside of someone else's mind. And we really don't know what they're thinking, what they're imagining, or even how they really feel. And we make assumptions when these conflicts are going on based off of our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences, and the facts that we have access to. But that's only half of the conflict. I mean, we're completely missing the other person's perspective. What are their thoughts? What are their feelings? What are their experiences? What facts do they have that they can add to the situation? So, I have 5 tips or 5 steps, even, that might help you resolve some conflict that you're going through right now, or if you can find a way to apply them, maybe make the conflict a little bit more manageable. And step one is to pause and reflect. That's not even a word. Pause, reflect, and pray. And the reason why that step one is there, it's so critical, because when conflict starts to go on, when those emotions start kind of stirring a little bit, your body can very quickly go into the fight or flight response. And if you're not aware of that, it can kick in so fast, and you can say or do something that you can regret. So once you realize, oh, there's something that's going on here, just take a break, get out of the situation, even just for a minute. If you have to go to the restroom, just excuse yourself, say you'll talk in a bit, kind of get away from the situation. If you're in a position, maybe you could go for a walk. Maybe you can, I don't know, just go clear your mind, scroll your phone, something that can help you just calm down a little bit. I am a person of faith. So when I know that this is kind of going on, praying is very important to me, because I'm always trying to seek God's will in whatever the situation is. So whatever it is that works for you to kind of ground yourself and get some peace, that's going to be step one. Now, step two, once you're in a better spot, and we can dive into step one maybe in another video to take it a little bit deeper. But once you're in a better spot, what you really want to do is reach out to that other person and ask them if you can talk about the situation. Now, this is really important, because what you're wanting to do by asking is try to revisit something where you're in a calmer space, but you're also showing some respect. And this is really important if you're in any kind of a position of authority, if you are a manager, if you are a parent, even, a big sibling or something. You don't want the other person to assume that just because of your title or your role, that you expect them to drop everything they're doing and go back and talk because you're in a better space. We want to make sure that they have some time to kind of regroup themselves. So if you ask, hey, can we talk about that? I've got maybe some information that I want to share with you. Or I've been thinking about what you were saying, and I'd like to talk about that again, and make sure that you're giving them a little bit of time to process as well. So schedule this time when it works good for the both of you. Step 3, when you do talk, when you have this conversation, you really need to describe the picture that you see in your mind. Whatever this conflict is over, focus more on the picture. This is what I see. This is what I thought was going to happen. And it could be something, as simple as what vacation might look like. It could be as complicated as a project that has deadlines and layers and pieces to it. But you need to paint this picture for the other person because you want them to start seeing themselves in your picture. Where do they fit in? How can they contribute? Because once they do that, I think that lowers a little bit of the pressure because they realize they're trying to catch your vision and you're trying to share that with them. Now, it's important too. Don't just share yours. You need to ask them, what do they see? They may not know this technique. They may not know this tactic to be able to say, oh, I want to paint a picture. They'll be like, what are you talking about? But if you ask them, hey, tell me what you see. How do you think this could go? What would vacation look like for you? What do you think about this deadline or this timeline? Start asking them questions to see if their vision is part of yours or is it completely different. I'm sure that when you do this, you really have this discussion, you're going to start seeing some similarities. The other thing, when you're asking them to share or paint this picture a little bit, um, you really want to be a good listener because they may be having some facts in there that they don't know is important to communicate. And you might realize you're missing something very important, a very important detail, or just some information that you're like, oh, if I would have known that, that would cause me maybe to change my vision or my picture a little bit. Okay, step 4, now that you're having this conversation, something that's really important is to point out the similarities in your two pictures and ask questions about what's different. And the thing is, as you begin to resolve this conflict together really being the key here, you're going to get a lot of momentum if you start focusing on what you have that is similar. What is in alignment? Where are you really walking along that same path? And then when are you a little bit different? Because the more similarities you can find, the stronger that relationship is going to be, the more clarity you're going to have on the situation. And then it makes it a little bit safer to go through these differences, to sort through and figure out, okay, what are we going to do about this? What's the best solution? Trying to contribute really some information to the situation rather than trying to get your way or them get their way. And if you think about this, is kind of a silly example. Think about unloading your groceries. So you've gone to the grocery store and you come home. Now, for me, I love when I pull in the driveway if my family helps me carry in the bags of groceries because honestly, I'm tired from shopping and sometimes going to the grocery store is a little overwhelming. But when my family comes out, they're there to help me and they start picking up the bags of groceries and they take them in. Do they put them exactly where I want them to go in the kitchen? No, probably not. They probably don't even take them in the order that I do. I mean, I'm a little crazy like that. Like I take in all my cold stuff first, try to put that away, and then take in the other items. But I have an option here. I could have a conflict that they're doing it the wrong way, or I can be like, "Wait a minute, they're helping me. Their way of doing it could be a little bit different, but what's the most important thing? They saved me some time and we got the job done. I don't need to be critical about how it's done because again, the picture that I'm really seeing, I want the groceries put away because I want to be done with that chore." Okay, step number 5, ask the other person if you can continue working through the oh my gosh, if you can continue working through the situation. Let me get a drink real quick. odds are this situation may have been simmering for a little while. One conversation probably isn't going to fix it. Where I see conflict really kind of start to come to a head, it's building and it's building and it's building. And then that little tiny thing just kind of sends everyone over the edge. So if you think about that one conversation won't fix it, there's something really good I can say though. One conversation can absolutely lower the tension and the temperature of whatever this conflict is. And if you find some similarities within the one conversation, it's going to make the next conversation a little bit more effective and you're working better together, moving closer to the resolution piece of this. Um, Ultimately, conflict, in my opinion, it really boils down to, or I should say, conflict resolution really boils down to why is this relationship important to you and what do you want it to look like in the future? When you're dealing with people, we all have different levels of relationships in our lives. Sometimes it's family that they're with you 24/7. Sometimes it is a coworker, sometimes it's a manager, someone who's having some influence on your future. So all of these relationships are important, so you want to keep them as healthy as possible. And I think now's a good time to remind you too that when we think about conflict resolution is not about winning. It's not about getting your way and proving that you were right. Conflict resolution is really finding a way to kind of go through life together, whether that's personal, whether that's professional. These people are in your lives, they play some kind of a role. So you want to be able to go through life in a way that's working for everyone. No one needs to be a bully trying to push their own way. We need to work together to find these solutions. Okay, so when I think about my Disney trip, I could have forced my expectations on those cast members. I could have told them their processes were too complicated. The park shouldn't require so much preparation. They had too many people. The hours need to be different. Restaurants should be in different locations. Whatever it was, I could have had opinions on all of it. And I could have just said, vacation's supposed to be fun. I want to wing it. Well, I'm entitled to my opinion, and my opinion might even be right, but that doesn't mean that I can force other people to change and do what it is that I want them to do. What is really important, at least in the vacation situation, was making vacation fun and memorable for my family. I don't want to embarrass them by arguing with someone or creating a scene. I don't want to ruin meals by complaining about the reservation process or complaining that we're eating at quick service instead of table service. Whatever it is, sometimes we can really kind of go down that rabbit hole and spend way too much time and energy on something that doesn't matter. What really, really matters is the relationship and making life a little bit sweeter. Even in the conflicts, we can still work together and work through those conflicts, and those relationships just get a little bit stronger. So I hope you can see, and I hope this is encouraging, that conflict is everywhere. We're never going to get away from it. The more important something is, the more likely conflict is going to pop up, whether that's personal or whether that's professional. But I also hope that you can see that by communicating those expectations, maybe a little differently, maybe a little more directly, that you can maybe prevent a conflict or keep it from escalating, or even start de-escalating a conflict that's going on that's pretty serious. So if this training was helpful, I'd love to know. This is the first time I've done something kind of this deep on conflict resolution, and I'm working on some more content. So I want to be sure that I cover the areas that you're struggling with the most, or the areas that you want to learn about. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again real soon.